following a report by the Express News. The head of the San Antonio Police Officers Association calls for the Attorney General's office to investigate a prominent local businesswoman's dismissed drunken driving charge.
The criminal justice system is set up to punish those who commit this dangerous crime. And if a charge like this is going to be dismissed, there needs to be a good reason for it.
Today, 38 Bexar County polling locations open for 5 days of early voting for several primary runoff elections. And the punishment phase begins for a San Antonio man convicted of killing his brother over an alleged dispute over the family home.
They had an FBI forensics expert testify the inside of a pair of sandy tennis shoes that were found inside the home matched the DNA of the defendant, Gregorio Barrera.
I'm Chance Storlin with your Express Briefing for Monday, May 14th. Subscribe to this and other free content at expressnews.com/podcasts. And get each day's top news and sports headlines delivered to your inbox at expressnews.com/newsletters. Saturday, the head of the San Antonio Police Officers Association called on the Texas Attorney General's office to look into why the Bexar County District Attorney's Office dismissed a drunken driving charge against a prominent local businesswoman, accused earlier this year of nearly crashing into a police officer. The decision to dismiss the case against Katherine Amato, who owns several area restaurants and is married to Charlie Amato, chairman and co-founder of SWBC and a Spurs shareholder, has also raised the eyebrows of the two candidates vying to replace Bexar County District Attorney Nico LaHood. I spoke with Express News Metro columnist Bryant about the case for In Depth, our weekly San Antonio news and events podcast.
There were two arrests that I found in the court records. The first was in 2016. She was pulled over on suspicion of driving while intoxicated, ultimately arrested. She submitted to field sobriety test on that stop, and then she refused to submit blood or breath samples. And as is the case in Bexar County, the police officer was able to file an affidavit for a search warrant listing the reasons that her blood should be drawn, and then a magistrate judge signed that search warrant and her blood was drawn. That charge was knocked down by the DA's office to obstruction of a highway, which is a lesser charge. She was put on deferred adjudication, which is a form of probation. And less than 2 years later, she was pulled over again. This was in February of this year. This time, she refused to submit even to the field sobriety tests. The officer had listed the reasons that he pulled her over and arrested her in the police report and also in another affidavit for a search warrant to draw her blood. And those reasons included she was swerving on the highway. She actually almost collided with the officer, according to the police report. She swerved into the lane on the highway that caused another vehicle to move over to avoid getting hit. After the officer arrested her, he found vodka bottles in her car and her purse. So her blood again was forcibly drawn. And less than 2 months after that, the DA's office dismissed the DWI charge because there was no probable cause for arrest. And to me, that was the crux of the story that really piqued my curiosity, is how could the DA have found no probable cause for her arrest when the police officer found so much probable cause that the magistrate judge authorized the forcible blood draw?
Chasnoff says while there's no direct evidence of wrongdoing, the dismissal of DWI charges against Katherine Amato is troublesome at best.
I found no evidence of any sort of quid pro quo in this situation where Mrs. Amato received leniency in exchange for something specific. But I can tell you that for the second DWI that she got in February, she did hire an attorney, and that attorney filed a flurry of motions. And the charge was dismissed very quickly relative to how most of these cases proceed through the system. And I think that's an important point, just the swiftness of the situation. I did speak to Bexar County Clerk Jerry Rickoff, who I liked his turn of phrase. He called this a rogue event, meaning it was highly unusual. He said this is like a rocket. A normal DWI takes like a year to move through the system. So on top of the dismissal and the possible expunction, just the speed with which this DWI case is moving through the system is a red flag.
My in-depth podcast interview with Express News Metro columnist Bryant is available for free download at expressnews.com/podcasts. 5 days of early voting for several primary runoff elections begin this morning at 38 locations around Bexar County, with polls opening each day at 8 a.m. and remaining open until 8 p.m. in the evening in the lead up to Election Day on May 22nd. While voters who cast ballots in the March 6 primaries must vote with the same party in the runoffs, those who did not vote are still eligible to vote in the runoff for either party. On the Democratic side, voters will choose between two gubernatorial candidates, and the Republican ballot includes a runoff for the Bexar County GOP chair. Voters in part of the county will decide a pair of nominations in the 21st Congressional District, while in the 23rd District, two Democrats are vying for the chance to face Representative Will Hurd on November 6th. The Bexar County Elections Department website includes a map of early voting locations and a full list of all runoff races. In the 2014 primary runoff, 64% of ballots were cast during early voting. Today, the punishment phase begins for Gregorio Barrera, convicted last week of killing his brother in an alleged dispute over the family home and burying his body in a shallow grave on the Padre Island National Seashore. I spoke with Express News course reporter Elizabeth Zavala about the case for The Docket, our weekly podcast on law and crime in San Antonio.
Gregorio Barrera was 48 years old and already in jail on a criminal trespassing charge when he was implicated and charged with killing his brother, Andres Barrera, 46. There were a lot of circumstantial things that the prosecutors brought to the jury that Ana Ochoa Nelson, prosecutor, said in her argument was going to lead them, if they looked at the totality of the evidence, it was going to lead them to a guilty verdict. That was where the argument ended, and then 4.5 hours later, the jury came back with a guilty verdict.
Find more details of the case in my full interview with Elizabeth Zavala, available for free download at expressnews.com/podcasts. Gregorio Barrera faces 5 to 99 years or life in prison. And San Antonio SC player Ethan Bryant's skills on the field, as well as his youthful appearance, is turning heads. But that comes as no surprise, as the 16-year-old Bryant is the team's youngest player on the official roster by 3 years. The SAFC Brain Trust sees Bryant, currently a reserve midfielder buried deep on the depth charts, as a major find and a future weapon, with hopes that the 16-year-old could become a top-notch player. However, following disappointing results with previous teenage standouts in the sport, the excitement comes with caveats, as coaches have an ironclad plan in place to be overly cautious and bring Bryant along slowly. Bryant is continuing his education via online high school classes, and the 16-year-old's SAFC contract doesn't impact his amateur status. And while there's no target date set for the team's youngest player to play in a match, SAFC Academy Director and assistant coach Nick Evans doesn't think the team will have to wait too long to see him on the field. And that's your daily San Antonio Express News briefing for Monday, May 14th. Subscribe to this and other free content at expressnews.com/podcasts. I'm Chance Storland.